Hi, I'm Clara. Last Thanksgiving, my family threw a reunion, one I paid for. But when I showed up, the room was empty. And my mom? She just laughed and said, "Don't worry, we'll bring you leftovers." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. But what happened next wasn't silence. It was survival. Why would a family cut someone out so cleanly and still expect them to stay? Have you ever felt like your kindness was used as currency? Let me know in the comments. I arrived at Devon's at exactly 6:57 p.m. The light in the parking lot flickered, casting a soft yellow over the asphalt that should have been dotted with familiar cars. But the space was quiet. Too quiet. No distant sound of laughter. No glimpse of Aunt Carol's clunky heels. No Micah leaning on his truck, texting. Just me. Just stillness. I sat in my car for a moment, adjusting the sleeves of my blue blouse. The one Mom once said made my shoulders look too square. I'd worn it anyway. I'd even curled the edges of the card tucked inside the small white bag resting on the passenger seat. My own version of tradition. Homemade cookies in lavender paper. Something to hold when conversation felt like quicksand. At 7:01 I stepped out. I walked across that empty lot with the soft crunch of leaves beneath my heels, telling myself maybe they were inside already. Maybe they had parked somewhere else. Maybe I'd misread the time. Inside, the restaurant buzzed. Waiters floated past with trays of steaming food. The scent of roasted garlic and truffle oil wrapped around me like something almost warm. I approached the hostess, clearing my throat. "Hi, I have a reservation. Madsen party. Private room." She glanced at the screen, fingers dancing across the tablet. Then she paused. "Oh, that party was yesterday." I blinked. "No, it's today. Friday at 7. She tilted her head sympathetically, her voice low. 16 guests, cake. Your mom brought place cards. It was last night." I didn't speak, just nodded. A short, mechanical motion. She looked unsure. "Do you want to call someone?" But I already was. The line rang twice before Mom answered, all brightness and ease. "Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay?" I asked the question I already knew the answer to. "Where is everyone?" There was a pause, a beat too long. Then that laugh, the airy one she used when pretending something hurt less than it did. "Oh, honey, it was yesterday. We thought you weren't coming. But don't worry, we'll bring you leftovers." I hung up, quietly, without another word. I drove home with the bag of cookies still sealed beside me, the radio off, the city humming outside the windows while something inside me quieted, or maybe collapsed. I didn't cry, didn't curse. I sat at the red lights and stared straight ahead, seeing everything and nothing. When I got home, I went to my desk, pulled out the drawer where I kept receipts. I didn't have to dig far. The catering deposit, the cake upgrade for Leanne's dietary restrictions, the custom napkins, $1,700 in total. Not that anyone had asked. And then, the next morning, Micah called. "Hey," he started casually. "You didn't get the message in the group chat? They changed it to Thursday last minute." Group chat? I wasn't in it. I hadn't even known there was one. "They thought you were busy, I guess," he added, like he regretted saying it the moment it left his mouth. I didn't respond, just said thanks and hung up. I opened the folder again, lined up the receipts, flattened the corners. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about clarity, about seeing it all laid out. About remembering who I was before they convinced me I was forgettable. They thought I'd let it go, but tomorrow, they'll find out what silence really sounds like. 2 years ago, we were sitting at the kitchen table after Sunday dinner. The dishes were stacked in the sink, and Leanne leaned back in her chair with a little sigh, too rehearsed to be real. "Clara," she said, "can I use your card for a few days? I just need to grab a few things until payday." I hesitated. My rent was due. I had tuition fees for a continuing legal class. I'd just sent Mom a check for her prescriptions. "I can't, Leanne. I really can't this time." I said it kindly. No judgment. Just a boundary. Leanne rolled her eyes with theatrical disappointment. "You always say no. It must be nice to have enough and still not share." Dad didn't look up from his tablet. Mom, slicing an apple at the counter, said quietly, "You do say no a lot, sweetheart." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. That night I lay in bed and replayed the moment. I hadn't snapped. I hadn't accused. I'd simply said no. But in this house, no was an offense. Refusing to give was equated with not caring, and I was the one who always had to prove I cared. Selfish. That word hung in the air for days. It wasn't spoken again, but it didn't need to be. It followed me like a smell I couldn't wash off. That was when I started to see it. The pattern. When I gave, it was expected. When I didn't, it was betrayal. There was no in-between. Months later, I found the courage to ask Leanne to split a birthday gift for Mom, a watch she'd once mentioned in passing. We agreed to go halves. I bought it, wrapped it, even drove across town to pick up the box from a boutique that didn't ship. On the night of the dinner, I handed the box to Leanne at the door. "You want to give it to her?" She smiled. "You do it." But during dessert, as Mom unwrapped the gift and beamed, she said, "Oh, Leanne, it's beautiful. You always know exactly what I like." I waited. Leanne didn't correct her. She smiled like she'd been caught doing something sweet, and Mom reached across the table to squeeze her hand. I didn't say anything, just sipped my water and swallowed the burn. Afterward, I told myself it didn't matter. It was just a gift, just a moment. But things accumulate. They stack up in the back of your mind until you realize your presence has been replaced, quietly, politely, with someone more convenient, someone who gives less and is thanked more, someone who takes credit and no one questions it. I started pulling away, not in a loud or angry way. I just stopped volunteering. I spoke less in group calls. I let things pass without stepping in, and no one noticed. Looking back, I see it clearly now. I wasn't protecting peace. I was forfeiting my place. That night, I looked through old pictures on my phone. I found one from Mom's birthday dinner. In the photo, I was holding the box. Leanne's hands were empty. That was the first time I wondered if they even remembered who actually loves them, or just the story they preferred. It started with an envelope I almost tossed in the trash. I thought it was a tax document or a new privacy policy from a credit union I barely used. The return address wasn't familiar. But I opened it anyway, sitting on the couch with a lukewarm cup of coffee in my hand and a movie paused on the TV. It was a lazy Saturday, nothing urgent, until it was. Inside, a statement, a credit card I didn't recognize, under my name. The first page didn't make sense, but by page 2 the fog cleared. A $580 spa package, a $1,100 charge at a luxury boutique downtown, a string of food delivery services I hadn't touched, and the shipping address, my parents' house. It wasn't confusion, not really. It was recognition of a pattern, of a rhythm I'd danced to for years without knowing the steps were choreographed by someone else. I didn't call anyone. I didn't scream or send a dramatic text. I printed the entire statement in silence, each page hissing softly from the printer like whispers I'd ignored for too long. I read the charges like reading my own obituary, each line a version of me someone else had signed for. Then I highlighted them, one by one: spa, shoes, silk robes, brunch. Every luxury I'd never allow myself, and yet somehow I was paying for them. I didn't ask for explanations. I'd already stopped expecting apologies. All I wanted was evidence, something real, something tangible. 2 days later, Micah called. He never called. He was the kind of cousin who texted once every 3 months and signed off with a thumbs-up emoji. So when his name flashed across my screen, I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Hey," he said, voice low, hesitant. "I just wanted to check something. I saw Leanne's post the other day. She was at the Palm Spa. Did you?" He didn't finish the question. I didn't have to. "No," I said. "I didn't." A pause, then a sigh. "I thought so. I screenshotted it, just in case. It looked expensive." "Thanks," I replied. "I already have the receipt." The line went quiet. Then Micah said softly, "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner." I didn't blame him. I never had. That night, I pulled out a new folder and labeled it in thick black ink. Credit. Inside, I placed the bank statement. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and created tabs: rent, gifts, medical, taxes. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger. It was reclamation. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to argue. I was just going to keep track. For the first time in my life, I started writing it down. I'd never kept score, but they'd made sure I was always the one holding the receipts, and so I filled that folder with facts. March 15th, $342. Dental work for Leanne. October 7th, $500. Mom's prescription and the Uber to her follow-up. December 12th, $1,700. Reunion I wasn't invited to. I wasn't trying to build a case. I was just done pretending this wasn't real. And when I was finished, I placed the folder in a fireproof box beneath my bed. It sat between my birth certificate and a file of emergency contacts. I didn't need a plan. I just needed to be ready. When the day comes, I won't shout. I'll just open this box. I wasn't supposed to go that day. I was only dropping off Mom's prescription, blood pressure meds that she refused to refill online because she didn't trust those tech systems. It was raining, and I didn't take off my coat. Just handed her the brown paper bag at the door, expecting to be back in my car before the news finished its next segment. But then I saw it. A new frame, polished and proud, standing on the console table in the living room. Front and center, facing the couch like it had always belonged, the photo. At first glance, it looked like a stock family portrait. Everyone carefully posed, coordinated colors, smiles that had been practiced. Leanne on the end, arms wrapped around Mom. Dad behind them, Micah tucked near Aunt Carol, even Jonah, Leanne's son, grinning with both front teeth missing. But not me. I wasn't in it. I stepped closer, thinking maybe it was cropped. Maybe I was in the printed version, but not this frame. Maybe this was a duplicate or a draft, but it wasn't. It was the version, final, approved, displayed. My breath didn't catch. My eyes didn't sting. My body just paused, like it needed a second to sink what my mind already understood. Mom followed my gaze, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, that? Leanne had it printed from Thanksgiving. You were working, right?" I didn't answer. I hadn't been working. She tilted her head like she was still deciding if she needed to soften the next part. "It was last minute. Besides, your face looked tired in the one we had with you." There it was, the edit justified. I nodded. She turned away, already asking if I wanted tea. I said no. In the silence that followed, I noticed the other details. The ceramic pumpkin still sitting on the windowsill from the fall, the slight shift in the family photo lineup, my college graduation photo moved to the hallway, replaced by a picture of Jonah holding a plastic medal. I sat down on the couch. Leanne was talking about the reunion again. We pulled it together so fast. Everyone pitched in. Mom said it was the best one in years. I watched her, smiling like she hadn't done anything wrong. And maybe she hadn't. Maybe no one had. But I had. I'd forgotten that showing up wasn't just about being present. It was about being useful. And I'd stopped being that. That photo didn't just exclude me. It rewrote me, as if my absence made the frame cleaner. And then I remembered something stupid. 3 months earlier, Mom had sent me a text. "Can you Venmo $85 to Picture Perfect Prints? Leanne's ordering a framed photo for the living room. Family one. It's a surprise. Don't tell Dad." I had sent it that afternoon. No questions asked. No receipt saved. It was a drop in the bucket. Until now. Until I realized I had paid for the picture that proved I didn't matter. That I had funded my own deletion. Later that night at home, I scrolled through my texts until I found the payment. Then I dug through my email until I found the invoice from the print shop. $84.92. I didn't cry. I just added it to the folder. And for the first time, I labeled the file differently. Not credit, not rent, not gifts. This one I named The Frame. Sunday lunch used to feel like something warm, familiar, like the rhythm of an old song you didn't have to think about. But that Sunday, the only thing I felt was cold. Mom placed a casserole dish in the center of the table and smiled like nothing had ever cracked. Leanne was talking about her new idea for a wellness brand, one that combined skincare with horoscopes. Dad nodded along, chewing too loudly. And then Mom laughed, slicing into the roast, and said it like it was a joke she'd told 100 times. "We all help each other, but let's not keep score, right?" I froze. Just for a second. Just long enough to feel my jaw tighten. Because I knew exactly who that was for. Only the people who benefit from your silence say that keeping receipts is cold. I didn't say anything. Just reached for the salad bowl and pretended I hadn't heard. But inside, I was pulling drawers open in my mind, remembering. Rent. 3 months when Leanne said her bank app was glitching. $380 for Dad's truck battery. $112 for takeout because Mom said she was too tired to cook for a week straight. $342 for Leanne's dentist bill because the pain couldn't wait. Gas cards, grocery runs, forgotten birthdays I still covered. They didn't see it as sacrifice. They saw it as structure, like I was the scaffolding holding the family upright, and expected not to creak. She just has it easier, they'd say, if anyone asked. She doesn't mind. Clara's always been stable. Stable is code for quiet, for invisible. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow notepad and a pen that bled slightly at the corners. I opened a drawer, pulled out the old bank receipts, the Venmo screenshots, the emailed invoices I never deleted. I drew a line under the first date. 01 March 15th, 2022, $342, Leanne's dentist, billed to my card, and then I kept writing. I didn't cry, I didn't feel angry even, just clear. I created folders on my desktop, labeled them rent, gifts, medical, taxes, trips. I knew the amounts wouldn't balance, they were never meant to, but I wanted to see it, to touch what I'd given away, not out of revenge, out of recognition. Because if love meant disappearing, I needed a record to prove I had existed. You only notice oxygen when it's gone, I wrote in my journal that night, and they think I just refill myself. But I was running out. I used to think being generous made me good, but now I see it for what it was. Surrender masked as love. So I labeled a folder and slipped the notepad inside. Not out of spite, not out of bitterness, just done. Before bed, I opened my phone camera and took a picture of the first page. The ink looked darker than it did in person, clearer. I saved the image under a new album. Clarity. Then I opened a blank message to myself. I'm not angry. I'm awake. And this time, I'm keeping the receipts. Dad's birthday had always been the one day he actually smiled for photos. That year, I'd ordered the grill set he'd pointed at in the catalog for months, the one he said was too expensive for just some coals and tongs. Leanne promised she'd split it with me, sent a thumbs-up emoji when I texted her the invoice, then vanished. The gift arrived. I wrapped it myself. I drove it to the party in my trunk, holding it with both hands like it was fragile, though it wasn't. That night after dinner, Dad unwrapped it with a chuckle and something close to surprise. Oh, this is nice. You girls? Well, Leanne, you know me. He smiled directly at her. She smiled back. I didn't say a word. I didn't expect acknowledgement anymore. I just hoped not to be erased. 1 week later, I stopped by to drop off extra groceries Mom had asked for. The kitchen was empty, but voices floated from the living room. I paused near the hallway. I don't know how you raise someone so cold, Leanne was saying. It's like Clara never needed anyone, like she decided we weren't enough. Mom's voice came next, soft and wistful. You've always been my soft one. Clara's just strong. Always has been. That was the moment it all crystallized. Leanne hadn't just taken my money. She'd taken my identity, piece by piece, quietly. She hadn't earned the title of caring daughter, but she wore it better, cried prettier, knew when to speak and when to seem small. I was the reliable one, the useful one. But usefulness isn't endearing. It's expected. I didn't step into the room. I didn't clear my throat. I turned around and left the groceries by the door. If Leanne wanted the role of the fragile one, she could have it. Let her have the late-night phone calls and the whispered worries. Let her cry in public and be held like glass. I was tired of auditioning. I drove home in silence. That kind of silence that doesn't ache. It sharpens. Like something you could cut clean through a wall with. At home, I opened the drawer where I kept the folder, pulled it out, turned it over in my hands. The label read, Family Contributions, in my careful handwriting. I peeled it off, wrote a new one. Clarity. They'd written me out of their memories. Now I was writing my own. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I wasn't hungry. I just sat at the edge of my bed, watching the way the room held me without demand, the way it didn't ask me to prove anything. Later, my phone buzzed. Group chat. Leanne, Hey everyone, thinking maybe a cookout next weekend? Let's pick a day. Mom reacted with a heart emoji. Micah said, I'm free Saturday. I said nothing. And still, the silence felt loud. It happened 3 months ago, but I still remember the smell of disinfectant and cold air conditioning blowing against my face in the ER. One minute I was sitting at my desk filing case notes, the next I was slumped over, unable to feel my hands. The doctor said stress, dehydration, and exhaustion. Said I'd been running on fumes for longer than I'd admitted. I stayed overnight. IV in one arm, heart monitor clicking every few seconds like a metronome for grief. No one came. No call from Mom, no text from Leanne, not even a half-hearted thumbs up from Dad. And the strangest part was, I wasn't surprised. Apparently, pain only counts if it's loud, and mine was too quiet. When I showed up to brunch the following Sunday, no one mentioned it. Not once. Mom passed me the syrup like nothing had happened. I told Carol you probably discharged yourself. She laughed. You've always been so independent. I smiled, small and practiced, the kind that says, let's not do this here. Then she said it. Oh, and I told everyone about the reunion. How sweet of you to cover it all. That cake wasn't cheap, but let's not make it a thing. You offered, right? The fork in my hand didn't shake, but my stomach did. That's how it worked with them. Rewrite the story. Make the giver seem eager, turn sacrifice into choice, frame silence as consent. They didn't forget to care. They decided I was better when I gave and shut up. That day, something inside me didn't snap. It shifted. When I got home, I opened the folder again. I printed a second set of every document. One to keep, one to use. Each receipt now had a label, a date, a category. I sorted them like puzzle pieces. The picture was almost complete. If generosity was a weapon they wielded, then silence would be my armor. And this time, I wouldn't be the one bleeding from it. I didn't tell anyone, not even Micah. I just organized, backed it all up, filed a second folder on a secure cloud drive, password protected, labeled simply, in case. 2 days later, a voicemail. Hey, honey. Mom's voice, casual. Leanne's a little short this month, just until Friday. Could you? I didn't respond. I didn't sigh or shake or second guess. I opened my phone, tapped upload. Let them wonder why I've stopped answering. The next response will come with interest. It was almost midnight when I opened Instagram. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe a distraction, maybe something mindless to lull me toward sleep. But there it was. Leanne's newest post, bright and filtered. A carousel of photos. A spa robe folded neatly on a glass bed bench. A box from Bellamy shoes with gold foil trim. A champagne flute resting on a rooftop balcony table. Caption. Little rewards for making it through a tough week. #deserved, #self-care, #gratitude. I didn't zoom in. I didn't need to. I recognized the spa, the boutique, the damn champagne flute. Each one a timestamp tied to a charge I never made, from a card I never held, under a name that wasn't hers. Mine. I took a screenshot, then another. Then I opened the receipts I'd stored in the folder labeled Clarity and matched them line for line. No more doubt. No more confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an accident or a case of shared addresses. It was theft, and not just of money. The next morning, I stopped at the salon down the street for a trim I didn't need. I just wanted to feel human, less like a wound walking. As I waited, I overheard my mother's friend Judith at the next chair, chatting with someone under a dryer. Leanne really stepped up for the reunion, covered everything herself. Poor girl, you can tell she's trying so hard. I didn't flinch, didn't turn around. I just listened as fiction folded itself into fact. They hadn't just replaced me in the group chat. They'd replaced me in the narrative, and I had let them. At home, I pulled the folder back out. This time, I added printouts, screenshots of Leanne's post, Micah's message, the statement with dates underlined in blue. I labeled each page, numbered them, clipped them together like a file I could hand over if ever asked. Were you really part of that family? If they needed proof I was ever there, I had plenty. All paid in full. Later that day, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hi, is this Clara Madsen? Yes. This is Officer Daniels from the local precinct. We've reviewed the documents you submitted. We'll be conducting a formal visit today to gather statements from your family. Is there anything you'd like to add before we proceed? I didn't hesitate. No, thank you. And I meant it. For once, I wasn't being asked to explain myself. I was being believed. After the call ended, I sat in the quiet for a long time. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, like finally the weight I'd been carrying had shifted off one shoulder and landed where it belonged. That afternoon, I watched from my apartment window as a black and white patrol car slowed near my parents' block, turned, then disappeared. They thought I wouldn't speak. I didn't. But I handed the truth to someone who would. The calls started 2 days after the police visit. First from Mom, then from Dad, then from Leanne. All unknown numbers, all straight to voicemail. One of them, probably Mom, left a message. "We didn't mean to hurt you. Maybe you overreacted. Let's talk, okay?" There was no apology in it, just the usual reframe, recast, rewrite. I didn't return a single one. Silence was the only language they ever responded to, and now they were finally listening. The thing is, I used to think I needed closure. I thought I had to sit across from them, list every betrayal, and watch their faces twist with guilt. But even if that moment came, it wouldn't be real. It would be another performance, another version of the truth, edited in their favor. So I stopped needing to explain, because explaining myself had become more exhausting than being misunderstood. I deleted the family group chat, removed myself from the shared grocery app, canceled the automatic monthly transfer that covered Mom's medication, unlinked every account that made me part of their machinery. I didn't tell anyone. I just exited, quietly. The apartment in Asheville was smaller than I'd imagined. 2 rooms, hardwood floors that creaked when you stepped wrong. But it was mine. Every spoon in the drawer, every plant on the windowsill. Mine. Micah messaged once, "You were the glue, Clara, but glue shouldn't break itself to keep things stuck." I didn't reply. Not because I disagreed, but because I knew he was right. A week into my new routine, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name and handwriting I recognized too well. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. Mom's pen had pressed harder than usual. "We never thought you'd actually leave, but if you're gone, we hope you're okay." That was it. No apology, no name, just a hope scribbled too late. I read it once, folded it, tucked it under the book on my nightstand. Boundaries. Not to keep it safe, just to remind myself I'd finally built some. That night, I journaled for the first time in weeks. I used to think I needed their version of love, the kind wrapped in expectations and roles I never auditioned for, but now I understand what I needed wasn't their love, it was distance. There was no vindication in that, no triumph, just peace. Not the kind that came after a battle, the kind that comes after you stop showing up to one. If they ever call again, maybe I'll answer, or maybe I won't. Either way, I'm already home. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. For a long time, I thought loyalty meant endurance, saying yes when I meant no, staying quiet when I should have spoken. But silence doesn't always keep the peace. Sometimes it keeps you small. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've been made to feel like your love only mattered when it came with a price tag, I hope this story reminds you that you can choose yourself. You're allowed to matter without asking for permission. What about you? Have you ever felt replaced, unseen, or quietly erased in your relationships? Tell me in the comments. If this video touched something in you, leave a or comment 1 inch to let me know. And hey, where are you watching from? If you didn't connect with it, I still want to hear from you. What didn't sit right? Let's talk. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. You never know. It might be the one you didn't know you needed.